That might sound kind of crazy. We need to learn how to learn? Yeah, we kind of do.
Hi, Dr. Dom. My name is Lily, and I'm 10 years old. Sometimes I get annoyed when people are distracting in class.
We are the distractions in class.
Squirrel.
Tell me why.
Am I so distracted all the time? Why am I also a distraction?
Stop.
Distraction.
But I also get distracted too. Why is that?
If you're having an attention problem, well, you know what? Good for you, because you're recognizing that you do. Now, attention and concentration problems are what we call a symptom. It's not a problem in and of itself. It could be a symptom of so many other things, right? Now, first of all, I want to tell you, sometimes it's okay to not be able to pay attention. Sometimes it's actually very normal to be distracted. But what we can do is, now that you're realizing that there's a problem, let's think about a few very basic things. Number one, if the subject matter that you're listening to is not interesting to you, you're probably going to have a harder time paying attention.
To alleviate the effects of the Anyone? The Great Depression, past the anyone?
So think about where in your life, maybe in school or in your daily life, where you're having trouble paying attention and focusing, because maybe your interest just isn't there, and you might have to use some strategies to develop more interest into that subject to pay more attention and be more interested in it. The other one is the environment that you're in.
Hello, we are taking the SATs in less than 12 hours. Can we focus?
Guess what, guys? If there's noise, if there are distractions, if the seating is uncomfortable, you're probably going to be distracted. So think about the environment that you're in, and if there are any circumstances in that environment that could potentially be distracting or affecting your attention and concentration.
Lean, turn that down, please.
A lot of people too, when they don't have personal organization, meaning they don't keep a notebook, they don't keep a calendar, things of that nature, they tend to feel overwhelmed because they have so many tasks to take care of. And when you feel overwhelmed, guess what happens? You feel anxious. And when you feel anxious, you can't concentrate. So I encourage you to pay attention to your structure, right? Are you taking good notes? Do you have a good notepad? Do you have things organized? Even just your physical things that you have, your pens and pencils and papers and books. Are you organized? And if you're not, sometimes just structuring those things can make a really, really big difference, because again, you'll feel less overwhelmed, then less anxious, and then be able to pay attention more. The other thing is the physical stuff. Guess what? Again, I'm just giving you guys these very basic things, but sometimes we forget. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you have to use the bathroom? Do you have physical pain? Do you have a headache? Are you anxious? Even if it's not a physical thing, are you worried about something? Is something else on your mind? Right? We're not robots, guys. We have a lot of external things happening, a lot of physical and mental feelings all happening at the same time. All of those things can distract you. All of that being said, if you go through that little checklist and really pay attention to all of those things, and you still find that you're having trouble concentrating, well, then it's time to get a good evaluation. And a neuropsychologist, a psychologist, a behavioral health professional, a medical doctor, a neurologist, these are all great people to talk to see potentially if you have a specific problem with attention and concentration that can be addressed.
There's a lot we can do if you let us try.
Hi, Dr. Dom. My name is JJ, and I am struggling with a screen dilemma. I don't want my daughter to not be included and not be able to chat with her friends, but I'm really worried about the amount of screen time. Can you help me with this?
This has been a topic since televisions. I remember my mom telling me, stop watching TV, it's gonna rot your brain, right? I remember these things. But now we have a lot of exposure to screens.
Technology, it's everywhere. iPhones, tablets.
So how bad are they? Well, here's the truth. Many studies support that screen time can have negative consequences. The first one is actually physical health, because what we notice is in research is the more time children and adults and adolescents spend on their screens, it leads to a more sedentary lifestyle. And obviously that means an increase in obesity, an increase in physical health issues. So the physical aspect of this is very real. Another problem that we see is what's called sleep dysregulation. People tend to get on their screens late at night when they're relaxing in bed. And the truth is that research has supported the blue light in these screens does activate the brain, and it reduces melatonin, which is a natural hormone that helps our mind relax and go to sleep. So that blue light stimulation late at night could potentially affect your sleep in a negative way. Not only that, but sometimes the content of what you're watching or your child is watching could be very activating. If they're watching action movies or very fast-paced content, these can certainly affect sleep as well. So sleep dysregulation is a very real consequence of too much screen time. Another thing that we see, which is really important, is developmental milestones. And what I mean by that is actually children that spent a lot of time on their screens growing up at a very young age had decreased social skills, decreased language development, and decreased attention span. So these are very, very real consequences of too much screen time. Content exposure, really, really important, guys, because there's so much inappropriate content out there. There's graphic content, there's sexual content, there's violent content. So the content exposure can also lead to some behavioral problems, and we know that through research as well. And then when we talk about mental health, something that's really important to face is that social media has caused what we call social comparison. So we notice that kids that spend a lot of time on social media platforms, for example, tend to have a little bit more self-criticism and judgment and decreased self-esteem. Now, I just gave you guys a laundry list of bad consequences. I also want to shine a little bit of light on this and say there actually has been research that showed that there was some positives with screen time. So let's talk about that for a second. With judicious use of screen time, educational content, and parent involvement, children actually did better in school, and they had better academic performance, and they had better attention and concentration, and better language skills.
Does anybody remember what was in this container before?
Ice burr.
I will accept ice burr.
Now, remember what I said: limited exposure, educational content, and with a parent present interacting with them. That's what the research shows in that regard. So let's get to the American Pediatric Association guidelines of how much screen time your children should or should not have. Well, from the age of 0 to 2, guess what? 0 screen time. From the age of 2 to 5, a total of 1 hour per day. And this should be educational content, and it should be under your supervision. And if you can interact with the child while they're watching this content, even better. Now, from the age of 5 to 17, the APA recommends no more than 2 hours a day on screen time, because after that, there tends to be some detrimental effects. All right, so hopefully this is some good information for you guys. So limit that screen time and follow some of those guidelines, and your kids are gonna be off to a great start.
Hi, Dr. Dom. I'm Sanaya, I'm 7 years old, and I just have a big question. How is it hard to study for me, but others it's way easier?
This is what I want to tell everybody. Studying is a learned skill. So that might sound kind of crazy. We need to learn how to learn? Yeah, we kind of do. And that's an acquired skill over time. So don't get too down on yourself if your study habits are not the greatest and you're not getting out of studying what you really want to get out of it.
There it is. Study it.
So let's think about a couple of things. If you're studying, number one, the environment that you're studying in, so incredibly important. Make it a dedicated space. Have a space that you are only going to study in. Maybe it's a place in your room, maybe it's a room in the house, maybe it's at the library, maybe it's at school, but it's a dedicated location that all that you do in that spot is study. That's your study spot. And in that spot, make sure that it's very well lit, because when it's dark, we get tired, we strain our eyes, we can get headaches. Make sure that that area is free of distractions, right? So not a lot of noise, not a lot of family running around, or a lot of other distractions that might pull you away from that study.
Explain to me the political ramifications of the Marshall Plan.
Pick a card.
The second thing is what people don't do is they don't set clear goals when they study, and they'll just say, okay, I have to read 10 chapters, drop the book in front of them, and think that that's gonna do something. That's gonna be really, really hard. Our brain likes to be structured and likes to have clear set goals for a lot of reasons, particularly for memory and the way that we encode memory. So what we wanna do is have specific objectives. So instead of plopping that big history book down and saying, I need to read 10 chapters and know it all, say, okay, I'm gonna take 15 minutes, I'm gonna read the first chapter, then I'm gonna take a 5-minute break, and I'm gonna actively think about what I just learned. That's a clear, set goal. And what really helped me and helped a lot of my friends was what we call active learning techniques. So instead of just reading a chapter in a book, you're interacting with others. So maybe you do read that chapter, but then you talk about it. Maybe you do read that chapter and teach someone else what you learned in that chapter or in that math problem or how to solve an equation.
We add them together, doubling the coefficients of the silver half equation, but not the voltage. We get the equation for the complete reaction.
What I used to do that was incredibly helpful following this active learning technique was I would get a whiteboard. Hopefully you guys know what a whiteboard is, with those dry erase markers. And I would read a part in my medical books. And then I would put my whiteboard up and I would try to reiterate some of the main points that I learned. And guess what? A lot of time I couldn't even write it down and I'd have to erase it and then go back and read it again. But that's an active learning technique that solidifies and encodes those memories much better than just passively reading. Because sometimes if we're passively learning, we're daydreaming, we're not really absorbing that information. Another really, really important point is take breaks. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna set a 20 or 25-minute interval that you're gonna study actively, reading, taking notes, talking to friends about it, teaching others. And then after that 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break. And in that 5-minute break, you're not allowed to study. You can get up, you can take a walk, you can go outside, you can stretch, and then you're gonna get back to doing that for another 20 or 25 minutes. After 4 of those sessions, you wanna take a good 30 minutes to gather yourself and do something else, whatever makes you happy and invigorates you. For me, it's exercise. For other people, it might just be relaxing or doing something else or reading something else, who knows? And guys, you're gonna hear me say this for just about everything because it's so important. And as a medical doctor and as a psychiatrist, I cannot emphasize enough how important proper sleep, proper nutrition, and proper exercise is for our mental faculties, our cognition, our memory, our learning ability. So if you're having trouble studying, make sure that that's taken care of. Make sure you're getting the appropriate sleep and your sleep hygiene is good. Make sure that your diet is good and make sure that you are exercising and physically active.